what advice do you wish that you were given before you entered Islam, and that same advice would you give it to potentially new reverts?
White people becoming Muslim still have to address their whiteness. Islam is the revolution. You know, this is, and Kalima, I bet your parents were kind of on that wave. You know, like this, you know, Malcolm X said, like, the answer to Black America's race problem and the answer to white America's race problem is Islam. So I probably met Muslims just, you know, being in high school and in college, around, you know, speaking out against the atrocities that the Israelis were committing and against our Palestinian brothers and sisters. So even though I wasn't raised with a religion, like, we were strong on morals. And I have some like intro music. I want Rich Homie Quan walk through.
I got you.
All right.
Assalamualaikum, Nikah and Chill family. Welcome to Nikah and Chill. This is a new episode, one I've been actually really excited to get into. It is called My Life as a Revert. This ummah does not, we unfortunately do not shed light a lot on the experiences of reverts. And isn't it amazing that Allah blesses us immensely for helping guide people into Islam, and yet we don't really dive into their experiences at all, coming into the religion, and then even after, so maybe a year in, 2 years in. Of course, it's a journey, so who they were in the beginning doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same person throughout, just like us. Whether you're born and raised Muslim or not, your journey is always going to be different than the next person. And subhanAllah, for those people who find themselves in a journey, getting closer to Allah or just learning a little bit more about Islam. We have an amazing guest here today. He is a social worker out of New Orleans. His name is Powell. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing, Powell?
Wa alaikum salam. And what's up, Nikah and Chill family? Glad to finally be on here.
Yay! Yes. You're so amazing. Like, I've met you a while ago. Actually, what has it been? It's been a couple of months, and I just learned so much about you. When I first met you, I remember you told me you were a revert, and you had already previously been married. So explain your relationship, or at least like how you guys maybe met.
Oh dang, we're jumping right into my marriage. All right, let's Nikah and Chill. I shouldn't have expected anything less. Yeah, alhamdulillah, we met through kind of the Muslim community. My kind of like home masjid is called the Lighthouse Masjid, and it's in Oakland, California. I'm Oakland, California, born and raised. And it actually, to me, was like my first experience with a mosque. But now, having been Muslim for 10 years, it really is kind of like, to me, still the standout kind of, and it's not without its own issues, but it really stands out in a way I think you, especially Kalima, would really like. And is much different than most of the masjids I've been to across the country. So we met through some activities in the Muslim community, and I believe she had been Muslim longer than I had. But we met each other both as Muslims. We actually ended up we found out later we went to the same high school.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was where we met, and that was kind of the little incubator community that you know, we were a part of as a couple.
Amazing.
And you know, our daughter had her akika there, and we did our nikah there, and it was all love.
Amazing. And you're Italian Muslim. Italian American. She is
Sicilian American.
Sicilian American. Okay.
Yes. We, you know, the Italians just kind of, you know, co-opted us, but we are our own people.
And what about her? What was her nationality?
Her dad was from Kingston and Jamaican, and her mom was white and Jewish.
Okay. So going back, because before you guys met, you reverted. What was your journey like? What made you realize, or when did you realize that Islam, I guess from Christianity to Islam, was the right path for you?
You know, being Sicilian, we're kind of like Catholic by name, but my parents are like left-wing socialists and artists and writers and stuff. So they really kind of threw off any type of religiosity or conservatism in there. So I was raised in a very secular kind of progressive situation where like a relationship with God, spiritual that wasn't really part of the, you know, my emotional development. So it wasn't really like the kind of convert story where I left one religion for another one.
Okay.
I was pretty much a blank slate when it came to
Oh wow.
theology, religion, spirituality, things like that. Yeah. So I guess my first experience with Islam is like most people first experience with Muslims. And really, you know, so my dad was kind of like outspoken about like the Palestinian cause. And so as was like, again, my kind of, you know, my teen group, and, you know, we were activists. We were like, you know, Bay Area, you know, hustling ass kids, but also who like had a political kind of mindset. So, and that's the beautiful part about the Bay. It's like you can see like a dope dealer and he'll like break down the like World Bank and like the IMF and, you know, globalization like that, you know, but he's out there like, you know, selling Percocets. So, anyway, so I probably met Muslims just you know, being in high school and in college, around, you know, speaking out against the atrocities that the Israelis were committing and against our Palestinian brothers and sisters. So it was more of like a political thing. But then I started to see that the Muslim ones, because there's like Christian Palestinians and they were kind of just like us. But then I noticed that there was something different about the Muslims, you know, a little bit of dawah there, a little bit of dawah here. And, you know, and it was just like the good, you know, the good character, the good vibes, the good energy from the Ummah. And, you know, our Ummah has its challenges and, you know, is not perfect in any means, but like, you know, I don't want to shortchange it. You know, we get very critical of the Ummah of like, oh, the Muslims don't do this or the Imams are like this. But like at the end of the day, you know, that was what first at least kind of got my, you know, ear to the street.
You said that your family, you know, were very left wing, progressive type of household that you grew up in, right? When you found Islam, alhamdulillah, did you find anything within Islam that aligns with that type of mentality? It's not like when you entered Islam, you left one religion to go into the other. But a lot of times, and from the reverts that I've met, right, there's something about Islam that's so familiar, so almost nostalgic. So based on how you grew up in a left-wing, more progressive household, was there something familiar in Islam with that?
Kalima and I talk about this, you know, a lot of like the nexus between the kind of like left liberal ecosystem and Islam and how do they interact? Do they interact? You know, all that. The similarities I can definitely speak to was that I feel like both my parents are moral people that have like a moral compass, and they're kind of, you know, left-wing ideology comes from a place of like, you know, this is right, you know, and what is going on in our society, and greed, and, you know, unfettered capitalism and racism, and that's wrong. That's morally wrong. So even though I wasn't raised with a religion, like we were strong on morals. Sicilians, like not a especially like religious group of people, like, you know, the mafia culture is like a big part of our community's orientation and how like our economy certainly functions. And obviously people think that like the mob is like, you know, on some gang shit and doesn't have morals, but there are like deep Sicilian morals even rooted within like criminal organization. So so I think the morality in Islam and the righteousness in Islam was familiar with the righteousness from where I was raised. Now, on the specific political issues, there's definitely, a divergence. And so that has been interesting to navigate with my family and my parents. And I think we've all come a long way in terms of, our understanding
Speaking
and
of
growth.
speaking of like, going a long way in understanding and growth, who were you in the beginning of coming to Islam, and who are you now compared to who you are today?
Man, I'm the same. I'm the same. You might see me on TV, but I'm the same old G. But I am a very different person from then, now, and then. But I think that more just has to do with life and maturing and growth and this and that. More so than like my religion.
What
I don't. I mean, I love Islam, but I don't necessarily give Islam credit for like my flowering of today. It's part of it. It's not the whole thing.
what advice do you wish that you were given before you entered Islam, and that same advice would you give it to potentially new reverts?
That's a good one. So I'm going to kind of sidestep that question, but answer it in this way. So me and my 3 best friends growing up all became Muslim. And so we were kind of like our little crew playing Little League Baseball. We were our crew going to middle school dances. We were our crew, slanging a bunch of different things. We were slanging to make money. We were our crew when we were at college. And then we all became Muslim. And so we're like a force kind of. And people who had like street cred and cred in the community, and people that were respected people, made people. No, I'm just playing. And so we were like heavy, and one of them especially got involved in the Jamaat Tabligh. I don't know if y'all have heard about that, like kind of Islamic group or effort, but it's really kind of like about giving dawah, like heavy. And so we were giving a lot of dawah, and really just gassed up on the deen and iman boost, and like everybody got to get on this. This is the like, we were reading the like, H. Rap Brown, now known as Imam Jamil Al-Amin, like, his book Revolution by the Book. We were like, Islam is the revolution. This is, and Kalima, I bet your parents were kind of on that wave, like this, Malcolm X said, like, the answer to Black America's race problem and the answer to white America's race problem is Islam. And so we were just kind of gassed up on that. And so, young 22, 23s, not really very mature in a deep sense, not really very wise, but just hold a lot of sway and gassed up on the deen. So we were giving a lot of people dawah, and like a lot of our friends dawah. And I probably would have been less aggressive in that, looking back on it. Because I was just like, take your shahada, get a hijabi wife, like leave the dunya behind kind of thing. And I don't know if I necessarily give young people that advice right now. And again, some of my, and may Allah reward, us for those intentions. And, a lot of people did become Muslim through that wave. And it wasn't just us. It was just the whole Bay culture then, so there was a whole Muslim, kind of young Muslim wave going on. And so there was a lot of people that got hidayah from that, but our Muslim community is not necessarily like built to like absorb everyone coming in the doors. It's like the Muslim community is kind of just like holding on to its own like weird space as like an immigrant community, or like the fledgling like Black Muslim experience. And I don't know. So then it was like this wave of like all these like turned up people who've got hella trauma and background and ideas coming into the masjid and like, I mean, it's kind of a recipe for disaster.
It's interesting that dependent on your background, racially, culturally, your revert experience may be different. So the advice that maybe someone would give to a white revert versus an Arab revert versus a black revert might be different. You just kind of shed light on the fact that dependent on your upbringing, you might be guided in or understand Islam or appreciate or respect it in a different way. Is there something you know now when someone says, wow, you're a white guy that reverted to Islam, like, what's something you could tell me about it before I consider even reading into it?
White people becoming Muslim still have to address their whiteness. Like, becoming Muslim doesn't absolve you of what your whiteness represents and what it means, and to be cognizant of how you move in a new community. Like, don't just walk up into the masjid and are like, my religion needs to be served to me like Arab, Pakistani, black people.
Right.
So I think that you still need to do the work around understanding that and moving in a way where you are an asset and not a liability. Some like white people, like Sicilians are not ethnically white, but we get lumped into the general body of whiteness, as do like Lebanese and Palestinians.
Racism,
yeah. So, but for like the truly white convert, who maybe is lacking their own cultural identity, don't just go in and try to. It's a little cringe when converts come in and start just trying to take on. Like, I've seen white converts like start to speak with an accent.
Yep.
And I'm like, the fuck is that? Like.
And it may be an identity crisis, but it's really interesting. Even maybe light-skinned black people who travel a little bit, they feel like learning Arabic, which we are taught that learning Arabic is the first way that the Quran was revealed. So that's a thing to be proud of. So much so that they almost literally start talking with an accent, as if like, oh, I've traveled for so long that I just gained this accent. But, Mehdi actually mentioned before that we don't really create a space sometimes for that person to.
Like, we had saw an individual who had.
He's a big influencer, right?
A big influencer, and completely adopted like he Arabized himself.
Yeah.
Let's say that, like he completely adopted the Arab culture, and it was a little cringe for me at first.
He's Arab.
And I'm Arab. I'm Palestinian and Lebanese. And I also saw a different individual who's a revert to Islam. She's a Muslim sister and she's white. The brother was a mixed race. He's biracial brother. The white sister also, like, she was making makluba, like, and wearing the abaya and this and this and that. And I was suggesting that I think we also, as the Muslim population, we don't create space, a healthy space, for people to enter Islam and keep their culture.
With their own culture. And it's so true.
But I think it has to do a lot with, you mentioned something very important, Kalima, which is like the Quran is written in Arabic.
Right.
And I think some of the earliest scholars of Islam looked at it as blasphemous to translate the Quran.
Yeah, right.
Right. You teach Islam by teaching the individual Arabic, then you teach them the Quran. But by doing so, you're inadvertently Arabizing people.
Yeah, I kind of understand both sides, even though it really isn't fair, especially as a Black woman who has a whole culture. But I find that when I get into certain circles, the more education that I show them that I know within Arab lifestyle and Arab language, I'm more accepted than if I were to come in and try to, impose my experience on them.
To really truly understand the Arabic language, you also have to understand cultural context.
That's
because
what I mean.
like there's a cultural emotion behind a word in Arabic that you can't
That's
really
what I'm
translate,
saying. Yeah.
right? You can't translate the emotion of it. You can't translate the memories of a word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can translate just the bare minimum.
Yeah.
But by doing so, you kind of have to also start understanding Arabic culture, especially when discussing like Quran. We want to have to understand like the culture of the Arabs at the time.
Exactly.
Another point to make is that there's so many different factors, right? We can't just point on one thing. I think Black Americans, especially when they adopt the more of the Arab culture as reverts, it's a lot more understandable because their culture has been ripped from them, stolen from them, and you know, so they're not as we're not as committed to one culture because we are a little bit more of an open book when it comes to, and it's maybe it's a way of reclaiming one's own identity in a way. But as far as like when you know white Americans revert to Islam and then adopt the culture, I think even though white Muslims might find this sensitive to hear, they should be more sensitive to what they're doing than Black Americans. I think because there's different intentions, you know. And as you were saying, brother, earlier, you know, like depending on your cultural background, you have a whole different experience about reverting to Islam. I just want to point out something, brother, that you said that I thought was interesting. You said that as a Sicilian, you're not truly a white American, right? You're not ethnically white. And I think, you know, one of the big problems that we face in the world, but it also intersects with our religious problems, is the expansion of whiteness and what it means to be white in America. And white people have always wanted to expand what it means to be white so that they can benefit from it. Yeah. You know, and a lot of people in Western Asia especially were classified as white. You know, Caucasians, the Asians from the Caucasus regions of Asia, you know, they were classified as white, even though that's not what they were at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole history, you know, even with my family. Like if you look at the immigration papers, if you were from mainland Italy, even southern Italy, like Calabria or Napoli or something, and you went through Ellis Island, they would put ethnicity Italian, race white. Wow. If you were Sicilian, they would put ethnicity Sicilian, race black. So on my grandfather's immigration passports, they called him a black guy.
Wow.
But like, we're not black. Like, where? I definitely hear y'all about kind of Arabization. I feel like in Kalima, and I don't know how much experience you have with this community, but in like my interactions with like kind of the Hotep community or the Pan-African kind of conscious community here, one of their knocks on Islam and why it is this like, oh, it's the Arab Christianity and, you know, it's at war with African spirituality and stuff like that. And so one element that and where I really break from like the traditional like liberal mindset is at this point in time, we're so caught up in identity politics and who's a culture vulture and who's appropriating what culture and who's assimilating into who and who's Arabizing who or who's Rachel Dolezalling the other one. And like, to me, I'm like, fuck all that. Excuse my language to our Muslim listeners. Like the beauty of Islam is that we are messing with the other cultures. And I'm one day I'm coming through with an off-white t-shirt and a lungi on, like, you know, or like, look at how Islam spread throughout all the continents and all the different ethnic groups, you know, the cross-culture mingling, the trading, the interracial marriages within Islam. To me, that's dope. And if you can't get behind that and you're like, oh, the Malaysians have been Arabized by the Yemeni coffee traders, or like, you know, the Nigerians have been like, if you're so caught up in your identity politics that you can't vibe with like people rocking, like I can't look at some drip that like the Palestinians have and be like, oh, you know, that's fire. I like that. I want to incorporate that. If you're so like into that, then, you know, may God help you. But like, I personally feel like I'm not into that. So
You're saying you're personally more open to learning about all different cultures and incorporating it into your life versus one track
Yeah,
mind.
like if I learn how to cook makluba, that just
Right.
means I'm a fire cook.
Right.
And I feel you. And so, but I think the one issue, Mehdi, to your point, especially for the white Americans and converts in general, I guess, born Muslims are kind of handed down Islam in one way, shape, or another. A convert's got to really leave something to come to something else. It's not like you don't just like stub your toe and fall into Islam. So I think what you got to understand is that American society, whether it's like capitalism or whatever American society is, it leads people to like they're stuck in their house, they're alienated, depression is at a sky rise, suicide. People are lost. And so this alienation, we have this celebrity culture where we like look up to these rich people, even though we're broke. And it's like, we listen to musicians who just remind us of how much more money they have than us. Like, it's wild, the psychological propaganda that our citizenry live under. So they come to Islam fleeing. They're like intellectual refugees, like fleeing that American alienation. Yeah. So if they're latching on to Pakistani culture or something, people go in different directions with it. Some people leave the country. Some people become Muslims. Some people explore their sexuality. Like, there's some little thing that's like the mainstream ain't right, and we got to find something else.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that He created us into tribes and nations so that we may learn and know from one another. Allah wants us to learn from each other, and Allah wants us to share our cultures. I sincerely believe that, especially us Arabs. We need to create a better space for reverts to continue having their culture and making that a part of Islamic culture, because it's so easy for our culture to be considered Islamic culture, but that type of privilege should be extended to other cultures, so that white reverts or black reverts aren't trying to make makluba. They can still eat their mac and cheese, and that can be Islamic.
Or we just don't feel like our culture is haram.
It's haram. And thank you. I was just about to leave there, because I've seen Arab sheikhs, brother, say
some parts of white culture is haram, by the way.
Thank you. Having braids is haram. Having an afro is haram. Having long hair is haram. I've heard Arab sheikhs on podiums with big platforms say things like that. And so I think that us Arabs, we need to do a better job at just allowing people to stay who they are and not making their white identity or their black identity haram.
Well, you're a better man than me, because I'd be up there talking all this type of stuff, being like, yeah, Becky, your whole life is haram.
Basically,
No, but I feel you. Well, and one thing you guys I might want to share is I've tapped in. There's a whole group of us Italian and Sicilian converts engaged with each other on, having like iftars with, and it feels a little like, nationalistic, but, people go to the Bengali masjid to kick it with their Bengali brethren. And so, we've done things where it's like, us Italian Muslims get together and eat cannolis and, do our iftar thing together. And one other element is that, like, I think it's caused a lot of us to reflect on our own history, where, Sicily was Muslim for hundreds of years and was civilized by the Arabs and given...
By the Moors specifically, right?
Yeah. I mean, it depends if you call the Moors Arabs, but like, if you go to like Sicily right now, I mean, the architecture, I mean, it's a boat ride away from Tunis. And, so I even found out that there are Tunisians in my family line.
I was about to say, that's what I was trying to... I am very curious.
Yeah.
What were your views coming into Islam about the divide between the different sects?
The war on terror narrative didn't work on me, just like the COVID narrative doesn't work on me. So I don't, so I didn't come into it with like, well, the Sunnis are fighting with the Shia, and like I didn't, I knew what the Bush administration was telling us was all cap. So also, some of my first experiences with Muslims were Sunni Palestinians, but also Shia Iranians and like Afghans and stuff. So like I feel like in my intro to the deen, was exposed to a pretty like diverse group as far as like the sex go and this and that.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of switch gears here back into just Muslim relationships, what has Islam taught you about?
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for the game, y'all. We need to.
Yeah, like, is there any way that you sort of approach, now that you're single, sort of approach relationships, romantic and otherwise, based on your experience with Islam at all?
I really don't know. We love Allah. You know, we say like we love for the sake, we do X, Y, and Z for the sake of Allah. And so there's an element of purity that like we as Muslims kind of strive for. And this gets into like relationships and premarital sex and all this. But the heart and soul is this like pure connection with Allah. And that's what we all need. I love that. My problem was, and I've seen a lot of brothers make this problem, is we then think that because we're married to Muslim women, we can just love them unconditionally and purely and in our like authentic kind of unguarded male way. And that I feel like by and large is kind of ignorant. And it was like all the stuff I knew about gender dynamics before Islam, I was like, oh, I'm Muslim now. It's a new game. You know, these hijabi women are like, you know, God's gift to humanity. And like all of my like understanding of how men and women interact up until this point, that's all, you know, kafir ideology. There's just a different, when you love Allah, you love your brothers, you love your children. That's like, for me, that I can love unconditionally. Mm-hmm. For my partner, for my wife, for these women, I can't do that. Yeah. So anyway, so I feel like Islam in the modern context hasn't actually done that well for me vis-a-vis navigating my love life with women. But that's okay. You know, I didn't become Muslim to navigate my love life with women. I became Muslim to, you know, be a better person and all that.
What did you learn about women in Islam as you were reverting to Islam? Quote unquote, a woman's place in this, even from an Islamic perspective. Were you taught as coming, you know, when you were coming into Islam, were you taught that women are submissive? Were you taught that women are supposed to be obedient? Were you taught that women are the opposite, that they're queens, self-dependent, etc.?
I definitely bought into the Muslim gender paradigm. And I bought into it in two ways. One is that if, as a man, if I just provide, am a good guy, go to the matches unconditionally, that is what a woman's looking for, and that's good enough to be a Muslim husband. So that kind of like nice guy Muslim husband, you know, the key to a good relationship, the happy wife, happy life, and the key to a good Muslim husband is just be, you know, love your wife like you love Allah, or love purely, and kind of drop the game and drop the swag and drop the sexual tension and just be like, you know, so friendly, and just the nice guy Muslim mentality. So I bought into that. And I bought into, and I don't know if that's necessarily a thing in Muslim cultures. That could just be a like blue pill California version of nice guy. You know, the gender dynamics, stay-at-home wife versus breadwinner man, and that was the correct formula. Because look, coming from California, I've seen the family dynamic chaos that like the new wave feminist movement ushered in. It ushered in some good things, and I certainly can speak highly to it in that way. But as far as the divorce rates, as far as the single motherhood, as far as the custody and child support court situation, it's a freaking disaster. So a lot of us were like, hey, I don't know about this traditional gender setup, but anything's got to be, it goes to the old alienation thing with culture. Anything is better than this freaking kafirun, you know, left-wing system we have here. And so I bought into the, you know, wife needs to stay at the house kind of thing and be obedient, and I need to just be like a little lapdog for her. And both of those buy-ins to me didn't serve me well at all, or serve my ex-wife well at all, and we ended up both not really enjoying either of those dynamics. So
Better read that for you, right? To follow up with that, do you think a lot of men love Islam or appreciate Islam coming into it because of the idea that their wives will be submissive housewives?
No, it's not as simple as being a submissive housewife. I think a lot of men in the West and in our sexual marketplace are so fed up and tired of the nonsense that especially young, non-financially established men have to go through from when they're like 16 all the way to 26, of just getting ghosted and ghosted and ghosted. And they're so tired of the game and getting their heart broken and cheated on, and everything that this thought culture has produced. I think that they are interested in Islam because they feel like, oh, my Muslim wife isn't like that. She's different. I can drop the game. I can just be myself. I can just be a nice guy, and she's going to love me in return. And I feel like that's a bigger attraction for converts than I want like a, subservient, submissive, quiet wife. Maybe some men do, but in my experience and in my ecosystem.
So what I'm hearing is that it wasn't really about having an obedient wife and being the quote unquote alpha male. It was more about not having to play so many games just to have a marriage and a family.
I would say so. But that's ill-advised, because at the end of the day, I don't think that's a good. I think that's problematic. Because again, you might be Muslim for 4 years. You hardly know any of the Muslim sisters. All you see them is beautifully draped up and fly and praying. So you just see their best self. You don't see what the Muslim women are actually like. Being on Musmatch, I feel like I know what Muslim women are actually like now. And I feel so much more at peace, because now I'm like, okay, now we can get somewhere. There's some realness here. But the whole courting process where you just see her looking fly and pious, it's not reality.
Muslim matchmaking apps have been a more realistic introduction or understanding of what a Muslim woman is for you.
Facts.
Yeah.
Where else? I mean, aside from the aunties and the grandmother and like the people in my Muslim community, like where else do I interact with like large masses of Muslim women? You
Absolutely.
You can always go to Target.
See my other women be at Target, Mehdi, so I can't be talking to the Muslims in there.
They're already looking for a lot of stuff. So.